Hi, this is Richard with What's Your Business Plan here. I do accounting and business writing. Today I'm really excited because I'm starting a new series of videos on the topic of investment deck writing and gaining private investment. I'm joined by my friend Mac Millner. He's an entrepreneur and business owner, and he's been involved in the industries of real estate, banking, solar power, and nutritional products. Currently, he's working with a startup that will employ 75 people. Now, his pitching record for this project started slowly, but boy did it pick up steam. After making some changes to his slide deck presentation, he went 4 for 4 with investment groups. 4 for 4, that's 4 investment groups back to back to back to back who said, yes, we like what we hear, we want to be involved, we want to begin our due diligence on this to see if we can fully support and fund the project that you're working on. Now, that is a tremendous amount of support. And all 4 of those companies came back and asked the same question: can you use more money? Can you imagine that being an option, coming from so many different sources? Well, all this good fortune came after he did something, and that something was change the writing of his slide deck presentation. After he changed what and how he was communicating. So please join me on this video where we can hear Mac's insights. And for this particular video, for LinkedIn and YouTube, please click the like button, share it with your friends, and as always, you can reach me at what'syourbusinessplan@gmail.com. Now, let's go hear Mac's insights. Thank you. My dear friend, welcome to the video. It's nice to see you again. We've had hundreds of conversations over the past couple of years, and what's always blown me away about you is you have been involved in so many different industries at so many different levels, and you've been successful at them. And, solar power. You've been involved with banking. You've been involved in real estate. And you've been involved with nutritional products. Not just running a business, but part of starting businesses. And you're one of those few rare finds where you're an individual who you weren't trained or groomed. You followed your intuition, you followed what you were excited about, and you just kept pursuing it, and you've had a great life doing it. And could you just take about 90 seconds to give us a Reader's Digest version of who Mac Millner is?
Thanks. I take that as compliments, and shifting from different businesses like that could be a sign of what am I running from, or as I like to think about, what am I more running to? Finding things that interest you doesn't seem to be too challenging for people, but definitely going and exploring deeper, peeling back layers to see if it's something, just putting it bluntly, something can you make money at? Can you make a living at it? What does that look like for the individual? So I think there's lots of things that excite people out there, but taking them on and seeing, can you make investment somewhere? Can you make a career? Investment being capital or time or both, and seeing if you can have a good go at something that you have a pretty deep interest in is going to be a significant advantage to the individual. Obviously, when something might be difficult, but you're not in the doldrums of doing something routine, that you're putting in your efforts to something that you're going to feel good about. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah. As I tell my wife when I come home from the kids' sports activities, and did you talk to Mac tonight? I said, yeah. What'd you talk about? I said, I have no idea. We talked about it all. So this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yes, it is.
I started doing some writing and working with some people in regards to their business and whatnot. And you are involved in a fascinating project. I'm not going to go into it. I'll let you talk about it the way you want to. But my only setup is you started off at first, saying, hey, we're we're trying to get investment money. We're trying to get investment money. We're looking for this, looking for that. And you kind of had some delays. And then there were some changes that you made. And with those changes, you really took off to the races. And where, you would talk to an investment group, and not only would you get them on the phone, you get a discussion with them, an appointed time where you'd speak for an hour. It would go for an hour and a half because they kept asking questions. And then they would go into the due diligence. And not just happened once, it happened several times after you made some changes. So could you tell me about whatever outline you want to say about the business or not is fine, but tailor it into how you use that to make the investment deck, how you told your story of what the business is, and then the changes that you made that went from strikeout to grand slam when it came to talking to investment groups.
Sure. So the business that, just putting it briefly, it's a very science heavy field, which is not my forte. On the nutrition side of things, the nutrition side is my forte. The heavy science lifting is not. I just happen to come in contact with these individuals through different networking circles that I work in. And I knew the backbone. It's growing algae for nutrition. So, I mean, I won't go, peeling back a bunch of layers about what that means, but growing algae for nutrition is extraordinarily complicated. So that wasn't the complicated part, wasn't what intrigued me. It just the value of the ingredient, the value of the proposition is what intrigued me. So on the good side, huge barrier to entry for anybody because it's very, again, heavily science based and complicated to do it. Bad thing is when you're going to different private equity or angel list or anything of the sort, there's almost no being able to explain that. And that might pose a huge wall for somebody like, well, if I can't understand this, then how's a market going to understand it? And it's, who are they going to sell it to? Is it retail or is it business to business? Or, lots of questions that are going to come up. So the first go around with a deck, which I liked, and I didn't think was actually that complicated, and it was too heavy on the science side, and me making a mistake too, not thinking that, but too heavy on the science side, and not near rich enough on the founders themselves, because they're people. They have histories, they have experience, they have stories. I wouldn't be around them if they were jerks. There's nothing to build upon there. So they also happen to be, luckily, people that I really enjoyed getting to know and spending time with. So on that first evolution of what we started with, we raised some eyebrows, and there was like, oh, it's kind of interesting, but I don't know anything about this. And it wasn't conveying a message of that this is easy to understand. These people can explain it on layman's terms very quickly and efficiently. And, no matter what the fundamentals look like, and with huge profit margins, they were glazed over because they couldn't see the application to the market. And they didn't feel comfortable, if you will, comfortable enough to keep going and get to the meat of, well, who's the team and why is this investable? So those were the mistakes we discovered.
So could you just kind of, just kind of a real brief overview, additional of here's an example of how I took this out and put this in instead, and made it more personable as opposed to science project.
Okay. It's a great setup. So thank you, by the way, because that kryptonite thing is really crucial. So going back to the drawing board, Patrick Taylor, Joe Miller are the founders and the principals, and they're really good people, and they love this so much. And in essence, they know they have a tiger by the tail. They'll both literally say, it's funny. It's just like once you get the hook of algae, and it's weird, it just sounds weird. But once you get the hook of algae and how complicated it is, but how beautiful the process is it's almost making something from nothing. So
Uh,
how they cultivate that is why they're so hooked and why they have this love affair with what they do. So there was the magic that they are people. They have this fascination with what they do, even though they have a tiger by the tail. You still got to get the thing moving, of course. So the moving part came from, listen, you're interesting guys. You're able to have high level conversation, and you're able to just talk about it like it's a normal everyday affair. And that's what you have to convey in this deck. You have to do it in just your own words, like we're just having this conversation now. And that's what gets fundamentally put out in that deck, that they can connect to you as a team, and to why this is interesting, and eventually why it's investable. But without their direct interest in you and how you're laying out, how did you get here?
yeah.
I mean, I know you got here because you have a love affair, but you need to tell your story of romance and essence about you're doing other things. They were literally doing other things that they had to do at the time. They didn't want to do it anymore. They had to do it to pay bills. And they had their struggles. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have been that way, but I wouldn't have gotten to meet them if they hadn't. So them having their struggles, not necessarily talking about the struggles, but why they hung in there,
Right.
and to arrive, where they get to talk about this today, and in my version, why they get to captivate people with that story.
That's really great. My father, um, when he was talking, he could cut to the crash and cut through the communication gap very quickly. And one thing he always told me was, Richard, bubble gum and baseball cards. What do you mean bubble gum and baseball cards? He goes, that's the currency. Well, not today, but when we were kids, until tech really blew up, third, fourth, fifth grade boys, their currency was trading baseball cards and sticks of bubble gum for the longest time. And so whatever you're talking about, whatever you're conveying, put it in terms of bubble gum and baseball cards, because if a fifth grader can understand it, anybody can understand it. So, and if you can't put it in those simple terms, then you don't understand it well enough. That was his always, no, and he was not a writer. He was a doctor. And he wasn't one who had eloquent words. He wasn't a charmer, so to speak, but he could break things down so quickly, and you go, oh, I get it. And I remember looking at your slide deck, um, be, before, and then I remember looking at things afterwards and going, Mac, you broke it down, bubble gums and baseball cards. And that is when things really, really took off for you guys, where it's like, hey, we have a pitch. And all of a sudden I see you 2 days later, how'd it go? They called us back. They want XY information. They want Z information. And the communication kept going. And so, congratulations. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have always found that if you go in and use the $10,000 words, you'll impress the people who really don't need to be impressed. But if you go in and use bubblegum and baseball terminology, explain it in those words, you'll capture them and you'll get them. So,
Yeah, yeah, I like that analogy.
um, I want to move on to phase two. Looking at my notes, squinting because I don't have my glasses on.
Mhm.